Hello, lovely people. This is your guide to the EDUCAS English Literature Component 1 exam. The EDUCAS Component 1 exam in my school is taking place on Monday, the 11th of May. Now, this is a 2-hour exam paper. This is obviously an old one here. It's a 2-hour exam paper. Section A asks you to write about a Shakespeare text. In our school, we do Macbeth, and that is on pages 4 to 5. Section B is poetry, and that is on pages 14 to 15 in this particular booklet. At the bottom, it tells you that you need to spend about an hour on section A and about an hour on section B. Remember to answer the question for the text that you have studied. So in our school, we study Macbeth in year 10 and 11. You're not writing about Romeo and Juliet or any of the other texts. Those are for different schools. So Macbeth is on page 4. Page 4. It says answer both question 1 and question 2. You're advised to spend 20 minutes on question 1 and 40 minutes on question 2. Question 1 says, look at the extract on the opposite page. So an extract, forgive the noise, an extract is provided. Here we go. Look at the extract on the opposite page, then answer the following question. Look at how Macbeth and Lady Macbeth speak and behave here. How do you think an audience might respond to this part of the play? Refer closely to details from the extract to support your answer. Now, this was the question in 2018. It's not going to be the question this year. We don't have any idea what the question will be, but the similarities is that you will be given an extract and you'll be asked a fairly general question. Normally, it will likely say, how do the characters speak and behave in the extract you're given? And how might the audience respond to this part of the play? As I've said, I don't know which extract you'll be given, and I don't know which characters it will ask you to focus on. This is just an example from a past paper. Here's the extract. Now, remember, you're advised to spend 20 minutes answering the question on the extract. The first thing you will need to do, of course, is to reread the extract and to try and work out which part of the story it comes from. If you don't understand all of the words, that is fine. Don't worry, don't panic, that's completely normal. But try and work out what's going on and pick out the bits you understand. Remember, we're looking for examples of how, in this particular exam, we were looking for how Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are presented and how an audience might feel or respond. So if it was me, I'd grab my pen and I'd be reading through, highlighting bits I understand. Macbeth in this extract says, "Prithee, peace!" I noticed the exclamation mark. He's saying to his wife, "Peace!" which seems to me to suggest that maybe he's a bit cross. "I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none." If you understand that, it's good to highlight it. I understand this bit. He's saying, I am a proper man. And that suggests that he's kind of being defensive. Now, if you want to, when you're going through, you could add words. Okay, so here, peace, he says to his wife. Be quiet. He sounds frustrated with his wife. Here, he sounds defensive. He's defending his masculinity. If you can't remember posh words like masculinity, you can say he's being defensive because Lady Macbeth has made him feel like he's not a proper man. Lady Macbeth replies, "Well, what beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it, then you were a man." So, she says, when you dared to do it, whatever she's talking about, then you were a man. So she's accusing him of not being a real man At this point, you'll probably remember, what is it Macbeth dared to do but then changed his mind about? Of course, it's killing Duncan. So she says, when you dared to kill King Duncan, then I considered you a proper man, but now I don't. Now, this shows, of course, that she's trying to kind of manipulate him. How is she doing that? She's making him feel like he's not a proper man. If you can remember the posh word for that, great, you can use that in your essay. She's emasculating him. But you get the idea. You go through the extract, pick out quotations you do understand. If you want to, quickly write how is Macbeth or Lady Macbeth presented, and think about how an audience might feel. When you finish doing that, you can start answering the question. Now, you've only got 20 minutes, so basically you're trying to track through the extract in order, packing in as many quotations as you can. I might write in my answer booklet, when Macbeth says to his wife, "Prithee, peace," this suggests that he is frustrated with his wife. And then show what you know. Why is he frustrated with his wife? This is because at this point in the play, she is arguing with him and trying to persuade him to kill Duncan. If you wanted to show off, you could perhaps say the exclamation mark emphasizes his frustration by showing that he's shouting. And then the next answer. When Macbeth says, "I dare do all that may become a man," it suggests he's defensive about his masculinity and that he doesn't believe killing Duncan would make him more masculine. And if you want to, maybe you could add, how might an audience feel about this? Either a modern audience or an audience in Shakespeare's time. When Lady Macbeth replies, "When you durst do it, then you were a man," it shows that she's trying to manipulate him by emasculating him. Her emphasis on the word then suggests she no longer sees him as a man. And you could talk about how an audience respond. Would they approve in those days of a woman manipulating her husband by insulting his manhood? Or would they be kind of upset by Lady Macbeth taking charge and being so dominant over her husband? Now, you don't have long, so you're aiming to write a sentence or two about each quotation. Try and pack in as many as you can. I would try and do 5 as a minimum, and if you're aiming for a grade 9, then just as many as you possibly can, the more the better. Do try and cover the whole extract, beginning, middle, end. Don't just write about the beginning. Try and cover the whole text. Quotes as many as you can. When the 20 minutes are up, you need to move on to question 2. Question 2 you have 40 minutes for, so twice as long, and this is to write an essay. It will often give you a statement and ask you to respond to it. For example, in this particular exam, here was the question. Macbeth is a play about violence. Write about how Shakespeare presents violence at different points in Macbeth. Refer to characters and events from the play in your answer. 5 of the questions marks are allocated for accuracy in spelling, punctuation, and the use of vocabulary and sentence structures. Now, remember, this is a past paper. Your question will be different, but the similarity is that it will be a question about the whole play. So here, how does Shakespeare present violence at different points in Macbeth? For this one, you will need to take some time to plan. You will need to think about the whole play and to make, I would suggest, a quick mind map. So how do we see violence in this play? Well, let's think. At the very beginning of the play, violence is seen as heroic. Do you remember how Macbeth is cutting his way through hordes of soldiers and he's celebrated as a hero who loves Scotland and is willing to fight for Scotland? So we've got violence presented in a positive way, as kind of love for one's country, that traditional idea of a man fighting for his country and for those he loves. And obviously we need quotations to support that. So we could have that famous quotation about how Macbeth unseamed a soldier from the nave, belly button, to the chaps. So from the stomach to the jaws, he unseamed a man. Grotesque, brutal violence, but in a way seen positively because he's fighting for his country. Remember, someone calls him brave Macbeth. So his violence is presented as a good thing. He's fighting for his country. Of course, as the play goes on, his violence gets out of hand. First of all, of course, he commits a terrible, terrible sin in the eyes of Shakespeare's audience. Macbeth commits regicide. He kills Duncan. And that's presented as a terrible, horrific crime. For example, Macduff says, "Oh, horror, horror, horror." He's so horrified that he repeats it 3 times. Now, this is what you would do. You would go through the story in your head and think about how violence is presented. Of course, by the end, earlier Macbeth said, blood will have blood. Okay, if you are violent, you'll be the victim of violence, and that's what happens. Macbeth is himself killed, and his head is cut off, and so on. So in your essay, you would write about the whole play. How is violence presented? If you could do, say, 5 paragraphs, that would be great. But basically do as much as you can in the 40 minutes. Try and cover the whole story. If you can, try and include a brief introduction, a sentence or 2, summarizing what your essay is about. And at the end, maybe a conclusion. What do you think Shakespeare's message is? What did he want us to learn about violence? And has he put that message across well or not? Why do you think? So there you have it. That's the first hour of your English literature paper 1. And a second video will think about section B.